Hello everyone, welcome back to the Catch Up Court channel. We do nothing but catch up on legal cases over here. If you cannot watch a full trial, or if you missed a full trial, we are here for you so that you can catch up with whatever you may have missed or whatever important detail that's out there. Welcome back. I go by the name of Heinz, and yeah, this trial has kicked off. It is a very interesting trial based on the theory of the case that has been proposed by both the prosecution and the defense, and we're going to go through all of that today. We are also going to go through the pre-trial stuff, the backstory to all of this, how we even got here. So that's what we're mainly going to go through within this stream. We are also gonna we're also gonna comment on the witnesses that have been put on today on day one. There were only 5 witnesses. It's a lot of the trial just began today, so not really fireworks off the gate, but we are gonna go through the most important part of this case, what you need to know regarding this case, so that you can catch up and pretty much be up to date. Yeah. So without further, let's go into the press release that was released when the body was found, when it was reported to law enforcement. So when that happened, it was reported by Georgia's Bureau of Investigation, and this was back in 2023. This was before the charges were even brought. I think the charges were brought in 2024. So this was back then. So it says here, victim identified and suspect arrested. So Nicholas Kassotis, he is a resident. I'm not sure if he's a native of Pennsylvania, but he was a resident at Pennsylvania when this arrest had happened. So he had to be extradited back into Georgia to basically stand trial where this case basically has jurisdiction. They tried to argue, I believe the defense, he is represented by Doug Weinstein. If you know who Doug Weinstein is, he was defending Young Thug from the YSL trial, or one of the defendants. I did not follow that trial closely. I did not go there for that trial, but I know that he was part of the YSL case. So he is representing Nicholas Kassotis, and yeah, like I said, Nicholas Kassotis is the defense was arguing regarding the venue being defective because he is a resident in Pennsylvania and he had no jurisdiction. But according to the prosecution, they're saying that this crime happened in Georgia, so it doesn't really matter where the jurisdiction lies. So they mentioned that in the opening statements. We are going to get to that, but before we do, let's continue reading this. It says Mindi's body was found on a hunting club which covered areas in Liberty and McIntosh counties on December 2022. She was only 40 years old at the time she was found. GBI agents assigned to this case sought the FBI's assistance with genealogy DNA. FBI used a lab specializing in advanced testing. By the way, let me know if you can hear me properly. But yeah. Trial channel is here. Thank you so much for joining. Gotti. Okay, Gotti case. Okay, thank you for that correction. I know he was involved in one of those cases, but like I said, I have no idea in regards to what the ins and outs of those trials are. But yeah, let's go back into this. This Nicholas the GBI interviewed family members and obtained DNA swabs for comparison to the profile created through genealogy DNA. Mindi Kassotis was identified on May 11, 2023. Kassotis was charged with felony murder, aggravated assault, tampering with evidence, and removal of body parts from the scene, which is basically, which is basically the dismemberment. Let me get the official charging documents up, because the bill of charge. Hold on. So we're gonna hold up. Okay, so it's here. This was uploaded by Jim Robichaud. He goes by the name of Happily Angry Lawyer on YouTube. I've linked his channel below. But yeah, this is the charging documents. He was charged of malice murder, felony murder, aggravated assault, concealing the death of another, possession of knife during commission of a felony, possession tools for the commission of the crime, possession of tools for the commission of the crime. All of this is pertaining to him possessing the vehicle to carry out the crime, and a vehicle to carry out a crime, and other tools which are going to be introduced in court. Removal of body parts from the scene and tampering with evidence. So that's essentially what he has been charged with. He does. So let's go into. Let me go into. Let's go back into the press release. It says the focus of investigative genetic technology is on the construction of family trees for the person identified as possible members to the victim or suspect by combing through public records, etc. So she was dismembered to a point. Basically, she was dismembered to a point that she was unrecognizable, and they literally had to go through. They literally had to do tissue identification or something like that, blood, etc. by the sound of this press release to find out who she was. So they couldn't just identify her by face or by the head. She was really, really finished, and a lot of the testimony today really reflect this. During pre-trial, I think 2 weeks before the case, evidence came to light, and it showed what the prosecution theory of the case was, and we are going to go here because the prosecution was asserting during the pre-trial hearing that the prosecution asserted that Kassotis ended his relationship with his first wife because he was owing 1.5 million. So he was on the run from this, and he had issues going into this next relationship, which he now they also, if I'm not mistaken, they also tried to introduce evidence regarding previous acts or bad acts in relationships, saying that he was beating the previous wife, but this wasn't allowed in because that goes against the rules of Rule 404B, which is prior bad acts. That can't come in to prove someone's bad character, so that wasn't allowed in. But they were trying to argue that. The defense was saying that the 3-year gap from last point of contact illustrates how these are separate issues. The state believes that this death was the beginning that led to him and his second wife going on the run together. And this is where it kind of doesn't make sense. It kind of departs, because what would be the motive for him to kill this wife when they were on the run together? Like they had this fun. Let's go by their theory that like based on this news report, he had this money problem, and he goes on a run with his wife and then kills her. So I'm eagerly await to see what the defense put on to kind of show this theory head on. But we're gonna go through the opening statements to basically show what they have to present in the case. So it says its motives for him being on the run. It explains the story all started because of this, said Laurie Bow. The judge said he was inclined to allow the testimony in trial. A big part of the trial yet to be fully uncovered is Jim McIntyre. During and after this time on the run, Kassotis claimed that McIntyre was controlling every aspect of his life, but the state believed that McIntyre isn't a real person. He says all of this is in an effort to explain why he and Mindi are on the run. Jim McIntyre's clearly that wasn't his real name, absolutely exists. Said Doug Weinstein. They were moving every few days at the control of this person. We'll keep calling Jim McIntyre. So what the defense is asserting is whether you believe he doesn't exist or not, he doesn't have the real name. And we are now going into the trial where, oh damn, I forgot to share my screen. I apologize. I forgot to share my screen, but hopefully you guys were able to follow along when I was reading. But there we are. I have linked the documents into the chat as well as in the description, so you guys can go read for yourself. We're now gonna go into the opening statements to show the theories of the case. Oh, here we go. We're not going to show the theories of the case in regards to what happened today was the defense went first because the prosecution deferred and allowed them to begin first. So Doug Weinstein was the person that began with the opening statement, which I felt, which I'm going to only go into the key parts of his opening statement. Let me go through it here. Hold up.
He has 2 law degrees.
Hold up. Wrong timestamp.
No one. So, but here, back off.
Hold up.
Service, we thank you.
You will hear.
Begin the trial at this time.
Oh my, sorry about this, guys.
Begin the trial at this.
Keep pressing the wrong button.
So, it's not just women. My client, Nick Kassotis,
Here you go.
is not just an accomplished attorney and decorated JAG officer who served his country in Iraq and in the Pentagon. He is also a man who lived in fear. Relentless, all-consuming fear. His wife, Mindi, also lived in fear. Mr. Kassotis is accused of the unthinkable, the absolutely unthinkable, murdering his wife. But the truth, what really happened, is far more complex. Mr. and Mrs. Kassotis were told that they were targets. You will hear testimony that a man calling himself Jim McIntyre, who knows if that is his real name, claiming to be with the FBI, told them that their lives were in danger, that they had to disappear, follow orders without question, and trust no one. Not their family, not their friends, not their loved ones. Every move they made, every lie that they both told, every strange decision, and there were quite a few that you will hear about in testimony, were driven by that fear. Mr. Kassotis lied to his friends. He lied to his family. He lied to Mindi's loved ones. He lied for years. Not because he wanted to deceive them, but because he believed that their lives depended on it.
So already, you can tell that what Doug is trying to say here is basically saying a stage that there are going to be some bad facts coming out of this case in regards to inconsistent statements, well, lies, basically by Nicholas to his friends and family regarding. We don't know. I don't know what he's lied about. We will find this out during the trial, but essentially he had to do these things because he was living in fear. That's the theory that they're presenting. That there was this figure that was after him, that was saying that he's in danger, etc. So so he has to basically do as they say. It does. I'm not gonna lie. That sounds like a convenient alibi. It does. So I am very, very interested to see what the defense put on and how they handle this case. I'm interested. I'm interested to see how the prosecution actually counter this argument. But to follow on with what the Weinstein is presenting, it seems to me that if Nicholas it just came back to me. Something about Nicholas is the fact that he is a writer. So he has written many stories. I believe there was a pre-trial motion as well to bring in evidence regarding him writing about killing women, etc. I believe there was there was evidence to that I believe is in one of the documents in regards to some of the discovery that they were trying to bring in. He has also changed his name numerous times. I'm not too sure, but I did read from one of the discovery documents that he has changed his name numerous times. So he was basically living this kind of double life, etc., because he's actually a criminal and he's trying to evade not only the debt he was owed, but also the fact that that he wants to be anonymous for the killing of Mindi. The one thing that did come out, so I'm trying not to rely on outside sources because I have gone onto a deep dive regarding this case. So I'm not trying to bring that in. I'm just going to try and focus on what has been in court, because the one thing I do know is that possible allegations of abuse have been left out based on the judge rulings, etc. So let's continue on with the let's continue on with the opening statements.
Unusual things begin to happen, and you will hear testimony on that. And I
think I've gone too far.
Like I have, a JD
okay,
degree.
So so I forgot to say he's a lawyer. He was a lawyer, and he also was an army vet as well. But yeah, let's continue.
And he eventually contacts authorities, and a man calling himself Jim McIntyre appears. Now, Jim McIntyre claims to be with the FBI, and Jim McIntyre tells Mr. Kassotis tells Mindi that they're in danger. They're in danger, their life is in danger, and they have to go essentially on the run. You'll also hear that following Mr. Kassotis' divorce from his first wife, Heather, she gets a $1.5 million judgment as part of the divorce against Mr. Kassotis. In the course of providing that award, Mr. Kassotis was under the belief that he was the recipient of a sizable sum of money. But you will hear he never gets that money. That money was illusory. That money was allegedly being held by Jim McIntyre for Mr. Kassotis. So he believed he was getting that money. He never got that money. I imagine that the state is going to tell you that Mr. Kassotis and Mrs. Kassotis, Mindi, moving around the country is because of this $1.5 million judgment. But the reality is, it was because of fear. So there's a lot going on with Jim McIntyre. There are a host of lies that are told by my client over the next few years while they are on the run. As I said, you're going to hear about the lies that they told to their friends. You're going to hear about the lies that they told to their family, and specifically that Mr. Kassotis told. But this isn't a case about that. I would like you to focus on the tragic murder of Mindi Kassotis. You're going to see horrific, awful images of Mindi Kassotis' body. Unfortunately, I imagine that they are going to stay with you long after this trial is over. You're going to see her torso. You're going to see her legs. You're going to see her head. And it will be difficult for you to see that. I'm sorry that any of us have to see that. You're going to see a Milwaukee knife that was found near the scene of her body. What aren't you going to hear? You're not going to hear evidence that that knife was used on Mindi Kassotis. You're not going to hear evidence from the state's own tool mark expert that that knife was used on Mindi Kassotis. You're going to hear about a tub that was found near her body that was likely used to transport Mindi Kassotis. You're not going to hear evidence of Mr. Kassotis' DNA on that tub. You're not going to hear evidence of Mr. Kassotis' blood on that tub. Just like in the knife, you're not going to hear evidence tying Mr. Kassotis to that specific knife. Now, you will hear evidence that Mr. Kassotis purchased the same brand and style of knife at Home Depot. But you will not see evidence, again, that ties Mr. Kassotis to that specific knife found at the scene. You're also going to hear evidence of a knife set that Mr. Kassotis purchased at Bass Pro Shops around the time of Mindi's death. But again, the state's own tool mark expert is not going to be able to tell you that those knives were used on Ms. Kassotis. There's a lot that the state will not be able to show you. The state will not even be able to tell you how Mindi died. They do not know how Mrs. Kassotis died. She was murdered, but how is unknown. You're not going to hear evidence telling you where Mindi was killed. They don't know where Mrs. Kassotis was killed, and you won't hear evidence about that. At the time of Mindi Kassotis' murder, Mr. and Mrs. Kassotis were living in Savannah. You'll hear evidence about the state's searching of the Airbnb that they were renting in Savannah. You'll hear evidence of her blood being found on the futon at that residence, along with another individual's blood. You won't hear evidence about whose blood that second individual's is. The state's case is going to be very circumstantial, which is why they will tell you it takes 2 weeks to put it on. You're going to hear evidence that my client's vehicle was at the scene, because they track the GPS in the vehicle. And when I say the scene where her body was found. But you're not going to hear any eyewitnesses placing my client at the scene. You're just not going to see any of that. So while you're going to hear witness after witness after witness testify about the lies that my client told when he was on the run from the individual or individuals that were trying to harm him and his wife. You'll hear lots of that. You're not going to hear a lot of evidence tying my client to this murder. So what I ask you to do is focus on what's really at issue here as you watch this evidence. Focus on what evidence does the state have that ties Mr. Kassotis to the death of Mrs. Kassotis. They're going to want to distract you. They're going to want to get into all these other lies. They're going to want to get into his third wife. He marries another woman shortly after Mindi's death. A woman that he had been inappropriately flirting with during the last months of Mindi's life. And after Mindi's tragic death, he goes to Pennsylvania and he marries her. But none of those are issues that are the primary issue. So I would just like you to listen to all of the state's evidence, hear what their witnesses say, look at their exhibits, and see if, once you review all of that, the state is going to meet their burden. Thank you very much, and I appreciate your attention this morning.
Yeah. So I personally think that a lot of the, of course, he has attacked the bad facts that are going to come out of the case early on, but I listening to all of that, especially with him getting married to another wife after the death of Mindi, that does look very sketch. However, he does bring out the fact that they're not gonna tie him to the crime, and that is something that we are going to be watching to see if they can prove that kind of theory, if they can show it through cross-examinations, etc. I'm not sure if Nicholas is gonna take the stand. Maybe unlikely. I have no idea. But it's not even a lot of witnesses on the witness list based on the pre-trial motions. It's only like 15 witnesses, I believe, are on the list. So it doesn't seem like it's going to be a very long trial. It doesn't seem like they have a lot to say that he definitely did this. And we've already gone through 5 witnesses today. So there's going to be 10 more witnesses to present. And I don't know if they're going to add on as the trial go on. So there are immediately questions in my head regarding if he is guilty of this crime. For example, if he's guilty of this crime, how does no one spot him on the scene if the car is there? we're gonna hear testimony. Sorry, not testimony. We're gonna hear now the prosecution opening statement and what evidence that they might have. So without further, I'm gonna get into it, and we're gonna start from there. All right.
A headless, legless torso, nude, completely nude, with 2 arms, one almost severed, her 2 legs severed, her head severed, just off the roadway. And as you can imagine, you will hear him testify. They were shocked, horrified. And I submit to you that the evidence that you will hear is that they returned to the clubhouse to try and get the police, to call somebody to come out. And you're going to hear testimony that that's when the onslaught of law enforcement kicks into high gear. They respond, and they get there by about 5 o'clock, 4:50 p.m. And you're going to hear what the hunting club area looked like. Portal Hunting Club and the area surrounding it, the adjacent territories, it's over 30,000 acres of logging territory. And they hunt on that territory with permission. That looked like a great place to drop a body.
I just want to pause right here. That's not really the best of arguments, but I get where they're coming from. If you have watched the recap that we done on this channel regarding the Megan Jackson trial, this is the same place that she did dump off the body of, I forgot the name of the boyfriend, but that's where she had dumped off the body with an accomplice, and it was at a hunting ground as well. So that's only so I can see why she's making that argument, but to me that just seems weak, especially with the fact that there will be loads and loads and loads of witnesses there. At least with Megan Jackson, she did it at night. But like I said, I don't know what evidence is gonna come out regarding all of this, regarding the time that it was dumped, if they have any of it. But this is already a big ask to try and prove their theory, because they're now saying that, you know, they're theorizing that he was the one that dumped it there.
If you're not from South Georgia, because that's a busy weekend. Logging, hunters, dogs. If you don't know they're there, I submit to you, you're going to hear that that wasn't a great place to leave a body, because they found it quick. Wasn't far off the road, and they found it quick. You're going to hear and see some of the information that law enforcement collected, where the torso was recovered. And you'll see those roadways. They're not asphalt. They're not like regular roadways of the highway, but they're still roadways. And the logging trucks use those. And there are cars that come through, and local citizens will cut through there when the season is going on because the locks are off the gates. And you're going to hear that people were coming and going. Lots of people. And over the next couple of days, you're going to hear what they found. But that very first day, on December 2nd of 2022, the crime scene investigator shows up, and they start documenting the crime scene. And I'm going to submit to you, ladies and gentlemen, counsel's right. I agree about one thing. There are tons of horrible pictures. And I submit to you that we will do our very best to limit what we show you. The state has a burden to prove our case beyond a reasonable doubt. And dismemberment, unfortunately, is what we were dealt. And we have to prove that. So we will present photographs to prove that. But the torso wasn't all that was found on that first day of December 2nd of 2022. Crime scene is going to talk about what they recovered there. And that investigator recovered not just the torso, but the tubs that were used to transport it. And I submit to you, you're going to hear testimony about the blood that was found inside of those tubs, that they tested it on the scene, that they knew it was first blood and then that it was human blood next, because they can test for that. And they're going to tell you also about the knife. Counsel talked to you a lot about what wasn't shown. But I submit to you, you all assured us, and I'm going to ask you to use your common sense as much as possible. You're going to hear about that knife. A Milwaukee, orange-handled, black-sheathed knife. And that knife, ladies and gentlemen, had a cleansing wipe wrapped around it. Call it what you will. Clorox wipes, things you use to clean up. Those wipes were everywhere. There were lots of them that were recovered. Because the killer didn't want to leave behind evidence.
Okay, so now I understand, well, at least now I understand why Doug Weinstein at least stressed home the fact that they had somebody that I've just completely forgot his name, but that person, the FBI, they put Jim McIntyre, that's it. So they had Jim McIntyre. So what the defense was basically presenting was a third-party culprit to basically say that this person likely was the person behind the whole dismemberment. And I'll be interested to hear in the closing arguments, because they might make that argument that why would he go on the run when you have all these facts? Why would he go on the run and then decide to get rid of his wife? And when he gets rid of the wife and use the cleansing wipes to kill, to basically clean the weapon that he used, which is exactly the same weapon that they say that he purchased. Why would he use the cleansing wipes and leave it there on the scene? Why would he not carry it with him? Why lay all these things for him? So at the same time, it's looking like a frame job. That's what they are based on the defense theory of the case. It's like they're asserting that a frame job basically occurred here, that likely Jim McIntyre or somebody else that was saying that his life was in danger had basically done this, because it still doesn't add up that he would leave and take her with him just to kill her. I mean, that doesn't make sense. I mean, like that's what the defense were trying to show, to kind of disprove the malice aforethought, part of the crime, but part of malice murder. So the state has the burden to prove malice aforethought regarding malice murder, but they also can prove this and meet this burden without there having to be a plan or anything like that. The prosecution can meet this burden by showing that there was enough malice forethought, that there was enough to show that there was intent to kill based on the manner that she died. So the fact we heard testimony in regards to how the body was dumped. We heard testimony in regards to how the body was cut up, how the body how the killing had occurred, basically. So there is a lot that they are putting on to try and show, to try and prove their theory of the case regarding the fact that he did this, and there was planning. At least they're trying to meet that element that they might have been planning, because obviously if you're wiping the weapon that you're using, that shows that you had the forethought. But how do you link it back to him doing all these things? Because anyone could have done it. Like the one thing that I haven't seen introduced yet is proof of purchase of wipes. If that was presented, maybe that would have been a stronger case. But anyway, I'm going to talk about the witnesses after the prosecution. I'm kind of getting ahead of myself. So let's go back into the opening statements.
I submit to you that killer was a prosecutor. I submit to you that the evidence is going to show that he would have known to clean up. And I submit to you that there's more evidence. That knife was purchased, I submit, the evidence will show, by Nicholas James Kassotis. If you look at that picture, the state will introduce it, you can see that knife tucked under his arm. That's him on surveillance from Home Depot. And I submit to you that in case you were unsure that that was him, that's the receipt. Showing, if you look closely, that's his name, Nicholas James Kassotis. So I submit to you, ladies and gentlemen, there's no question that the evidence will show that Nicholas James Kassotis purchased that knife. And if you look at that, he bought it at 8:56 a.m. on the morning that you will ultimately hear was the day her body was dumped. The same day, hours after. And you will hear evidence of exactly how we know that.
That's a massive promise. That's a massive promise. And I will see, I await to see how this plays out, how they even say that this was on the same day. Because, anyway, we're going to get to testimony that they haven't even presented yet when exactly, or the analyst even knows exactly when this death had occurred. So very interesting, very, very interesting.
You'll see the tubs. They will be here in this courtroom. You will hear about the DNA analyst testing the substances inside of those tubs, and that it was Mindi's blood in those tubs. They didn't know who she was then. They just knew there was an unidentified torso. Those tubs also get bought at Home Depot. And you're going to hear how detectives from the Liberty County Sheriff's Office and the Georgia Bureau of Investigation ran down every lead they could. And in the beginning of this case, you're going to hear that there wasn't a lot to work with. You're going to hear they found a torso with no head and no legs. And that was all they had. That, the knife, and the tubs. So you're going to hear how they started with the knife and the tubs. And then it gets worse. Because while hunters are still out hunting, we find more pieces. Over a 3-mile radius, pieces are dumped with no regard, I submit to you, will be the evidence. Tossed into the woods. The heavier piece, right by the edge of the road. But her legs, they're brought farther out in the woods. The second tub is recovered. I submit to you that was used to carry her leg. You're also going to hear how her head was ultimately recovered. First leg found by a hunter, separate hunter than the first crew. I submit to you, ladies and gentlemen, you're going to hear about all of the victims in this case, because although Mindi suffered the most tragic loss, no question, every person this case touches suffered. You're going to hear there's a second hunter that finds the first leg. And then you're going to hear that they do a canine search. They deploy the dogs, cadaver dogs, to try and find the rest of her. That their job was to try and find this whole person to lay her to rest. You're going to hear that a canine recovered with his handler, of course, the second leg. And I'm not going to show it right now, but you're going to hear how they collected maggots, fly larvae from that leg to determine when these pieces were dumped. You're going to hear from the doctor I call him the bug doctor. He's an entomologist. Not that fancy. He's going to tell you when those bugs could have been exposed to her body and how that helped law enforcement to narrow down when she got there. That's the second tub. That was found next to the leg. And you're going to see where each of these pieces was recovered. I submit to you, ladies and gentlemen, you're going to hear that they were recovered exactly where Nicholas James Kassotis' vehicle was tracked. You're also going to hear him admit that he was there. And I submit to you, you're going to hear him admit it once he realizes law enforcement can track his car.
Is the same question right, trial channel? Is the same question that I asked. She basically said, why would he leave the tubs there? That's a great question. The same thing I had in regards to the wives. I mean, I do accept what you say that you know, regarding that that the prosecution does not have to show that he bought them, but at the same time, why would he just leave the wipes that he just cleaned the weapon for? So that doesn't make sense to me. So I'm eager to see how the defense combats that, and if there is any way of combating that. But yeah, why would he leave? Why would he leave the tubs there? Why would he do all of this? And also, another fact that came out of this is the fact that I think we're gonna get into that.
Fortunately, wasn't found until.
I think we're gonna get into that, but it was. Let's just fast forward. Oh, let's read it.
And then you're going to hear and see Mr. Kassotis buying a shovel, November 4th of 2022. From Home Depot, just by his house in Savannah. Counsel had you believe it's circumstantial, you're not going to see anything, but I submit to you, your common sense is going to easily dictate what the evidence shows.
So if they're saying that he admits to being there, that must have been either a police interview that he does admit to be there, because I can't see the prosecution anticipating that he's going to take the stand. So he may have done it in a police interview that they might try to get into evidence. Let me try and find the part that, yeah, this is the part that I'm looking for. Let's go here.
You're going to hear that they got remarried. She was found on December 2nd, that he was already engaged by February, and that he was already married again by April. That he changed his name several times in multiple states. I submit to you, he didn't want to pay that money. That's what you're going to hear. And you're going to hear how he tried to seal off the loose ends. Changing his name, he burned the car. I submit to you, that's what the evidence will show. To the ground. March. Brand new Ford Explorer.
I'm not gonna lie, that is a very bad fact. I'm not gonna lie. The ex-wife, sorry, not the ex-wife, I don't know if they're still together, but the new wife that that he basically had right after killing her, I think sometime in April or something like that, and he had already killed her according to their timeline in November or December. So based on that alone, bad fact one, and the bad fact in regards to the car being totaled, like completely done. If this guy was involved in a car explosion and they can prove that, that's, in my opinion, that would sink the prosecution case completely. But I don't know if there's any log regarding him calling insurance. Maybe that might come in to kind of circumvent this fact, or defend against this fact, but I do think that that is a very compelling piece of evidence for the prosecution. I'm not gonna lie. It does not, in my opinion, based on what they presented, they have promised a lot that if they cannot tie it back to him, I'll be very surprised. I will be extremely surprised. Maybe what Doug Weinstein was talking about was regarding DNA evidence, that they can't really tie it back to him one way or the other. Maybe he was talking about the eyewitnesses that he made reference to. Yeah, that's a good point for him, because if he was there and he was in the vehicle, people would have seen him. So based on what's presented so far, it literally looks like, I'm not sure if you guys have played this game before, called Ace Attorney. It looks like one of those cases that it just is really bad for the defendant, and it's up to Phoenix Ace to basically save the defendant and bring out one key witness that shows that it was all a concocted plan by the prosecution or something like that. It looks as bad as that, but like, I'm really interested to see how this goes. Let's continue on with the prosecution opening statement. Yeah, so they explain, we're not gonna go into all of that. We have already talked about the charges. So yeah, they basically gone on to explain the charges, etc. The first witness that was up was David Lovett. He is an hunter. He was hunting there for a while. He basically testified to how it was hunting season. A lot of these witnesses were just neutral, technical witnesses that just laid the foundation for what happened that day. But yeah, he was the one that saw the torso and reported to the clubhouse, and that was basically it. And all Doug Weinstein did was just go up and basically cross-examine him, saying it's not a secret that it was hunting season. So yeah, that was, in my opinion, to get to the fact that yeah, a lot of people were there. It seems like the defense are trying to show, yeah, he's not hiding from the fact that a lot of people were there, but they still cannot put the defendant at the scene. And this is very important, because we have to know what vehicle was registered, what was the registration of the vehicle at the scene, and whether it was actually traced back to him. Because other people can have their own vehicles, like, you know, different type of vehicles, but you know, things like that. Also, who was actually driving the vehicle? That's also another important information that has to be established. So if he was really there and he was really busy, it would be improbable that no one would notice this guy, unless he was wearing some kind of baseball cap with glasses, with a fake mustache that no one can see, fake beard, everything, you know. But like, yeah. So I see why the defense are presenting a third-party corporate theory. Anyway, the next witness after David Lovett was Anthony Brown, who was a police officer. He was the one that was handling the crime scene. He was the one that set up the crime scene and extended the crime scene when they found the leg, etc. When they found other body parts on the same day, I believe. And to be quite fair, when it came to his testimony, it was very, very thorough in terms of technicality and what they did, because they're trying to, in my opinion, they were basically trying to show that it was a thorough investigation to at least gather all the evidence together. Because what the defense was basically alluding to is that all they have was just circumstantial evidence that they can't really tie it back in, basically giving the impression that the investigation was not thorough enough. So they're trying to get ahead based on these witnesses, they're trying to remove that fact from the jury's minds to basically show that they did do a thorough job. They were even accounting for. They even showed the evidence log, not the evidence log, the chain of not the chain of command, the police log that to show who they spoke to at what time, the names of the hunters that they spoke to, and what time they spoke to them, what time this agent arrived. I haven't seen I've watched a lot of trials, but I haven't seen that level of thoroughness where they are going through. Maybe it's just leftover from the Karen Reed trial where I've seen bad chain of custody, etc. But this one, I don't think you can accuse them of the investigation not being thorough enough. The cross-examination for Officer Brown was not really a lot. It was just Doug Weinstein was basically just highlighting how many vehicles he was allowed to leave. That was the main testimony, and the officer basically said he allowed vehicles to leave and then closed them off. And I'm guessing that because of the evidence log that they collected, that they have got statements from these hunters. So that was that testimony. Philip McCullough was an hunter as well. He gave testimony, and he just basically testified to finding the leg, and that was about it. He also testified to finding the knife that was also reported to the officers. John Murphy, who is a retired officer. Oh yeah, by the way, there was no cross-exam for Philip McCullough's testimony. The next witness was John Murphy, who was the retired K9 officer, and he was the one that was in charge of the K9 search unit, and he just basically gave testimony that there was clothing found on the scene, which I believe had gone on for further analysis. He also testified that the dogs that he was using had changed their behavior. When they were going through looking for the tote, they had changed their behavior, and they looked at a bag, like a trash bag, and that's where they found a red substance, which he believed was blood or something like that. So they handed that over to the analyst, and that was basically the bulk of his testimony. And all the cross-examination was in regards to where the tote was found originally, which was at the back of a tree or something like that. And then the tote was then recovered from the tree, and then it was put, and that's where they basically found it. But there was no testimony in regards to he didn't see who did this. He was just reported that this happened. So maybe we're gonna hear testimony in regards to who did the movement, etc. Because if it was found in one location at this point and then someone else moved it and it wasn't recorded that they moved it from that position to another position, likely suggests that it was dumped there. So that would be a failing of the chain of custody failing, and it will just give that reasonable doubt that when they were there, they probably mistaken a trash bag, like the dog probably smelled chicken bones or something like that. I don't know. But this is what I'm trying to say. That another trash bag was found or something like that, and then someone else came in and put it there. There is no way to be 100% sure, because again, they don't have anyone tying to the crime scene, so they have to be very, very careful in how they present this. And by they, I mean the prosecution. So that was the bulk of his testimony. There was no redirect after this. Brett Dickerson, who was a special GBI agent, was testifying. He testified for most of the day, and the cross-examination is going to happen tomorrow, which I'm really interested for, because a lot of his testimony, in my opinion, it was very technical. It was just the chain of custody. They went through all of that. They established that there was no clothing on the body, that she was found lying on her torso. She was basically naked, and the legs, the femur, all those parts were cut through completely. Basically, based on how she was even disposed and killed, it gives the malice murder element can be easily met if they just put Nicholas, I keep forgetting his name, but anyway, if they just put Nicholas Kassotis on the scene, that's it. They have met that element and the case is over, because like I said, the one part about malice murder is that they don't have to prove malice aforethought. It's the way that it's worded, at least from what I understood of it. Could be wrong, but I will inquire more to know more. But from what I learned, if the body if the murder was done gruesomely, it can qualify to be malice murder. And this is where I basically got the breakdown from. And let me just go to it so that you guys can see. So, and this was by the law of self-defense. You might know him, you might have heard of him. He goes by the name of Andrew Branca. I've been on a couple of streams with him on other channels, but yeah, he says a person commits when that person unlawfully, and this was a suggested jury pattern jury instructions for the state of GA. Says a person commits murder when that person unlawfully and with malice aforethought, either expressed or implied. So that's the most important part, implied. So they don't have to show that, from my understanding, that it was methodic, basically. Causes of death of another human being. Express malice is the deliberate intention unlawfully to take away the life of another human being, which is shown by the external circumstances capable of proof. Malice may but need not be implied when no considerable provocation appears and when all of the circumstances of this killing show an abandoned and malignant heart. It is for the jury to decide whether or not the facts of this case show malice. Let me just move on. If the killing is done with malice, no matter how short the time the malicious intent may have existed, just killing constitutes as malice murder. So Georgia law does not require premeditation, and no particular length of time is required for malice to be generated in the mind of a person. It may be formed in a moment, and instantly a mortal wound may be inflicted. Yet if malice is in the mind of the accused at the time of the doing of the act or killing and moves the accused to do it, such is sufficient to constitute the homicide as murder. So that's basically the point I was trying to get at, because they from my understanding reading this, they don't require, they just don't require that he has to have planned all this out. If they can just put him at the scene and just show definitively that he was definitely at the scene and he definitely dumped the body one way or the other, then yeah, he is definitely guilty of that. I don't he'll be guilty of that simply because of the evidence presented today in regards to the GBI agent. So I'm gonna play a bit of his testimony, but before I do that, let me go into the chat. Charles Channel says, yeah, if they are in the house and they can say these are the same lemon scent Clorox wife you have, it's not very strong, but it's another small tie, I guess. Yeah, I mean, I doubt. Yeah, I mean, they need to go back to his old house. So I'm pretty sure they may have scavenged that house to try and find whatever they could find to tie it back to Nicholas. They may have done that, but they also likely would have searched his Pennsylvania home where he shared with his new girlfriend. I'm waiting to see all of this. If they haven't done that, the jury might just look at that and be like, why would you not look at this place and handicap them on that, no matter how thorough they were in regards to how they collected evidence from the hunting. So yeah, so that was that's my determination of it. The car thing really is crazy, and I think the car being burned down is probably their best evidence to at least show there was some kind of premeditation and some intent to commit this crime. All they have to do is just link him back, because end of the day, he could easily, you don't even need much. You just have to say, look, listen, some guy committed arson on me. You don't have to prove that. They don't have to prove anything outside of, he made a call to his insurance company to say that arson was committed in my car. That's all they need. Logically, that would be my response, but of course, we know that there are rules of evidence, so he may not even allowed to. He may not be allowed to even bring in that evidence, even if he had it, maybe for hearsay reasons. I don't know, whatever. But it's not. What I'm trying to say is that it's not a slam dunk. Basically, that's what I'm trying to say. It's not a slam dunk of an evidence, but it's still very good. Young Black Economist, welcome. Catch up. Good to see you. Good to see you too. I'm glad that you are here. I'm going to be covering this case giving recaps every day. I will do my best to bring as much information, as much commentary or outside information as I can to try and make analysis of what I'm seeing. But based on the opening statements and what is presented so far, I believe that they can meet the intent part of this murder. They can definitely meet it, but they need to 100% put it all back to Nicholas. But I'm very interested. I'm very interested to see how the defense is going to respond to all of this. So anyway, let's continue on. Brett Dickerson, his testimony was just, regarding the recovery of the body, the collection of the body to go and for it to go and be analyzed. He didn't do the DNA testing, etc., because he wasn't the specialist for it. So he didn't give testimony in regards to how it will be traced back to Nicholas. Someone else had done something like that. So they're not going to prove that theory of the case, that all these things that the DNA testing that they done, that the analysis that they done all trace back to Richard. So this is just one of the agents that they have to just show the extent of the injury. And I believe his testimony, a bulk of it, was just to combat the idea that the defense presented, the implied idea that they were not thorough in this investigation. He basically gave a lot of testimony to show that there was a solid chain of command, that there was a lot of communication with many different people, and it was all documented and done properly. So, but we have to wait for cross-examination, because we've seen other trials in which, like I said, the current retrial. I'm not saying that this is what's going to happen. I'm just saying that they can say all this. We know that Yuri was saying all this, that the troopers were collecting the evidence properly and done all this, but then it came out on cross-examination that they didn't even have a consistent chain of command, that the evidence was not even collected properly, all these things. So we have to wait in regards to the cross-examination for this GBI agents and what it may reveal tomorrow. But the testimony, let me just go to the testimony that he made in regards to the in regards to the what he had found regarding the femur being cut, etc. So let's watch.
Of severe injury up around the shoulder area, and just in general, she was laying on her back and was heavily splattered with mud. Clavicles, the ends of her legs. The femurs in her legs had been cut through and were protruding from the ends of her legs. And also her vertebra, several of the neck vertebrae were visible. They were blackened, and the skin around the neck had drawn down toward the clavicles. Her right arm shows some signs of severe injury up around the shoulder area, and just in general, she was laying on her back and was heavily splattered with mud. It was difficult to really tell the extent of her injuries at that time because she'd have so much mud clinging to her skin.
Okay. What was the nature of her clothing at that time?
She was naked. There was no clothing recovered there.
Okay.
All right. So that is the intense part established in a roundabout way, but it's still, for someone to cut through the femur, that's definitely meets the malice murder element. Definitely.
Well, on both hands, the hands were there for one thing. For someone who may have been trying to obscure, an identification of the body, then to leave the hands on, and with availability of possible fingerprints, that was something that we had to evaluate as being immediately useful to the investigation.
Did you try to evaluate the fingerprints?
Yes, ma'am. After she was removed from the ditch, we had a representative from the Georgia State Patrol respond to the scene. They have access to a system called Rapid ID, and they can actually use fingerprint technology to access someone's driver's license remotely. They can do that from anywhere that has a cell signal.
Okay. Does it allow them to basically like roll a fingerprint on a little device?
Yes, ma'am. It's a small device, handheld. It's generally used just two of the fingers. They'll roll or press it against the screen, and it'll read and interpret that and give you an idea of who a person may be if their fingerprints are on file.
Were they?
No, ma'am. The Rapid ID system did not return a result.
Okay.
So
despite that testimony that they tried to get the fingerprints of anyone else that may have handled this torso or handled the body, there was nothing back in regards to the fingerprint that could tie it back to Nicholas.
Now going to slide 21. What's depicted there?
That's Mindi's right leg, the area where it was removed, and that's her femur that's jutting outward from the wound there.
Now, my apologies. Can you tell us what specifically was unique about that cut on that femur?
It was pretty smooth. It was appeared to us to have been cut or sawn through.
Okay. Are you a hunter?
I am.
How long have you been hunting?
Since I was a child, single digits, a while.
Have you ever processed a deer?
Yes, ma'am, I have.
Okay. Have you ever processed a deer in this fashion?
Cutting through a major bone, no, ma'am.
Why not?
Well, that's not the easiest way to remove a leg.
What is the easiest way?
Well, there's connective tissue surrounding joints, and the easiest way would be to cut that connective tissue and remove. If I was going to clean a deer, I would cut through the joint rather than try to saw through a bone.
I thought this line of questioning was I thought it was smart. I thought it was smart to give this a side by side view of what a deer, we eat that, I mean, I don't eat deer, so I mean, we don't get them over here in the UK, so I can't really speak to how it tastes or anything like that. But I know for a fact that if I'm eating lamb or something, which I do eat, or beef, and it just has bone on it, I'm not gonna try and cut through the bone, but rather I'll just cut around it to try and get the meat off. So just that imagery that that you wouldn't even try to go into into the bone of a venison. So how does somebody has the mind to cut through the bone of a human being when they're dismembering them? So I believe that this testimony really, really helped the prosecution with their theory of the case. Not theories, with that, with the elements, with the charges elements regarding malice murder. So that was probably the most part that I noticed from his testimony to come out. I'm waiting. I'm gonna wait until tomorrow to, of course, see what cross examination brings us, because we don't know what's gonna come out tomorrow. Before, let me just go into the chat before. Objection is not Young Black Economist says objection is not ideas, but I mean, I've seen Doug, from what I've seen in regards to the objections that Doug Weinstein had done, he probably would have done that if it was objectionable. I would have tried it, but he has won on most of his objections so far. So I know that he has quite a reputation of having a lot of people were just saying that online that he does score pretty good with his objections. So and to be quite fair, a lot of his objections so far has been sustained. So yeah, so I think that's pretty much the bulk that I could glean from the testimonies that was brought out today. A lot of it was just technical, a lot of it was just foundational, just to lay the evidence to try and prove some of the elements of the charges that they are bringing. I think they have shown that there's definitely a dismemberment, but they obviously, of course, they have to tie it back to that they have to tie it back to Nicholas. But they have definitely shown that there was removal of body parts. They're definitely shown, they haven't shown yet, well, they've shown that he has tools in regards to the knife to commit the crime. They have shown that part, but he has other parts to show. But they have other parts to show. So, during the pre-trial, like I mentioned earlier, just to go over that, there was testimony. There was a motion in limine to exclude some documents from coming in, and testimony regarding the first wife. I don't think it's successful because they can mention the 1.5 million that he was owing, but of course, like I mentioned earlier, they could not bring in prior bad acts. I think they have they made the argument during the pre-trial motion as well. So yeah, let me just share the screen before I go. Let me share the screen before I do. Oh. Hold on. Hold up. Okay, so let me see if you can see that. I'm not sure. Oh, I can't. Can I zoom in? Can you guys see that? Okay. So this is the rest of the evidence that we can expect to come in. This was the intent to produce business records. This was submitted by the prosecution, and they intend to introduce sales record for the purchase of a Ford Explorer that belonged. So this is the vehicle. They're trying to show that he had possession of the tools to for the commission of the crime. So they're gonna bring that in to kind of prove that element. Sony 300 business contracts filed for the purchase of the rights to a short story. My mother-in-law poisoning me. Then I find out why. This is the part that kind of shocked me, because I want to know why they would want to bring these business records in. Of course, it's a big company like Sony, but what has the short story got to do with it? We touched on it a little bit at the start of the stream, but of course he's a writer as well, and he's written many books. So they're gonna bring in some fiction that he's written to try and prove that he did this. I don't see the relevant. I hope that the judge is not actually going to allow this part in. I think it was objected to, at least the business contracts. It would have been objected to, because if you let that in, then you also gotta then you might want to go into the substance of what's in the stories that was sold to Sony. So I don't think it's gonna be allowed in, but you can already see what the prosecution were trying to angle when they brought this in. So AT&T records for Explorer. I'm not American, so I don't know what AT&T records mean. That's so bad. That is so bad. Let me know in the. I think it means call records or whatever. But let me know in the comments what AT&T. Oh my god, that's embarrassing. I know what Verizon means, which is it's a cell company. I do know that T-Mobile used to be a cell company here in the UK, so I definitely know that. Renaissance Bank records, that might come in, but I don't know what purpose is gonna come in. Maybe to show that he did receive the money from whatever, or to show that he has the money to conduct this, because the defense provided their theory of the case to say that he didn't actually have money, because the FBI personnel, Jim McIntyre, had promised him money but was withholding it from him, so he didn't really have that money, so he couldn't have been making all of these moves. He couldn't have been traveling all this, because he was actually waiting for money to come through. So I think that's what that evidence is going to try and disprove. Records for the knife piece set, which I think is definitely going to come in. The purchase of the knife the purchase of the Home Depot record purchase of the knife and shovel, and the Cure Insurance Company records for the Ford Explorer. So if they're bringing in the company records, which I think that it could be likely that is gonna get removed for hearsay reasons. It might do from objection. But this was submitted on the 3rd of July, so not long ago. So if, and I don't know this, but if they're bringing that company records and it has on file that there was that he reported arson to the vehicle, that someone else had done it or whatsoever, then I think it helps him more than it helps the defense. You guys have to tell me, because I've seen movies where people do some things for insurance money, that they would actually do something to their car and then report it, or they will burn down a building and then report it for the insurance money. I don't know how it's done over there. So maybe they're trying to bring it in to try and say that he was committing insurance fraud as well. If that's the case, might be disallowed because of prior Rule 403 being prejudicial because of committing a crime, or would that be Rule 404B? It might be disallowed if that's the purpose that they're bringing that they're bringing in the insurance company. So it really depends what they're trying to show with the insurance company records. But to me, that's just the case. AT&T is also a cell phone company. Thank you, Trial Channel. Young black economist says if they let a Nicki Minaj song come in in attributing to Young Thug, the bar is that low. What the? If this guy wrote some story telling his crimes, that's even more of a direct connection. Are you kidding me? Wait, they actually letting a Nicki Minaj song in a Young Thug trial to do that? I didn't even. Oh wow. The last thing that I heard about the Young Thug trial was the fact that they were trying to introduce lyrics, and they were citing Young Thug's lyrics to try and say that he was the one that did it. But I think Young Thug won, or something like that, if memory serves. From it was just a Twitter clip it, or that was going around, and they were basically, I think one of the lawyers that I followed was basically saying that it's kind of absurd that rap lyrics are trying to be used to prove a RICO enterprise or something like that. So I didn't know that they actually let in a Nicki Minaj song. Are you kidding me? That's insane. Different judge, yes, but same state. Yeah, and case laws and stuff. So we'll see, I guess. That would be, I mean, if they let him in, if they actually let it in, that to me is mind-blowing, because works of fiction cannot, works of fiction just shouldn't have a place in the law, because that's where a lot of people are protected. Like, you can write whatever you want, even if you are let's just say you are confessing. That is still cathartic. That's creativity is meant to be a form of catharsis. I'm not sure my accent is coming out here, but catharsis, is that how you say it? But anyway, even if that's it's still a form of that. So even if, let's just say that it's all true, he wrote down the confession, etc., that is still, it's not supposed, that's not the purpose of, you're not supposed to write stories or do all those things to be held in contempt or be held criminally liable, no matter what. You just not, because our house, it should never. It's not about it being enough to prove a case. It should never be considered. And this is the only part that people have to vent about stuff in life without having to be possibly held criminally liable. Are you telling me that if I was to make a song or make a short film about me wishing that my ex that cheated on me with another guy in my bathroom, that if I was to do that I'm saying I want to kill her, I'm going to kill her, this is how I'm going to do it, I'm going to dismember her body, I'm going to do this, and I wrote it in that short story and then acted it out on a screenplay and did all that? Are you telling me that if she really dies and she was dismembered, that I should be criminally liable? No, I'm sorry. It's always has been, creative works are supposed to be it's supposed to be protected. It's never supposed to be something where you are criminally liable. I'm sorry. I'm really surprised that it's being considered. This is why I really hate that that Drake and Kendrick lawsuit. I haven't bothered covering it because if Drake wins that case, it just strengthens all of this stupidity. But anyway, that's just my own personal feelings in regards to that. I hope that doesn't come in. I really hope. Anyway, the trial channel says, I got the opening statements on my channel and now working on posting. Is that a YSL case? Oh, okay. I didn't know that you covered it. Okay. Guys, go check out our channel. The trial channel. Like, really, really neat channel. Like, extremely neat, really organized. But yeah, I understand prosecution using it to help investigation. For example, if fiction discusses the location of body, you can go look, but I don't think it should be presented in trial because, yeah, absolutely, I agree. So if you're using it to connect the dots, there is no way you should there is no way you should use it to say that this person definitively did it. Like, you know, I mean, it's one of these gray areas that if the prosecution used it to actually find the body, then why shouldn't they present that to the jury? You know, all those things. So it's one of those gray areas, but I don't even think, personally, I don't think it should be used at all. Leave it alone. Don't bother using it for investigation. Don't bother use the tools that you're given, which is the analysts, the fingerprint identifiers, all of these things. Use that. Leave songs alone. Leave songs, story writing alone, all of those things. That's not the purpose of it. Anyway. That's literally all our time for. We'll be back tomorrow. Covering day 2 of the trial. There should be more witnesses coming forth. So hopefully tomorrow bears a lot more fruit. But I think based on what's brought out today, this is going to be a very compelling case. I want to see how the defense show their third-party corporate theory, and I want to see how they deliver on their promises regarding this whole Jim McIntyre person. I like very, 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 very interested at this point. So yeah, anyway, I'm gonna stop it there. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. Let me know how you're feeling in the comments. If you're watching videos back on replay, let me know. And also to Young Black Economists and the Trial Channel and everyone else, the lurkers, I know that you're there. If you've been lurking, thanks for tuning in. Next time, say hi in a chat so that I know that you exist. But I appreciate you regardless for tuning in. Take good care of yourself. Have a great day or evening or night wherever you're at. Make sure that you like this video, share this video, as well as subscribe for more. And yeah, I'll leave all the links that I have used, you know, in this stream and future streams as well. Definitely always will leave it in the description so that you can go check out a lot more information regarding this case. Without further, thank you so much for tuning in. Take good care of yourself. And yeah, if you are unable to watch trials or it's just too long for you, this is the perfect place for you, because we catch up on trials, and yeah, that's all we do on this channel. So check out our videos and our live streams. Anyways, have a good evening or day. Bye for now. Thank you for tuning in for another episode of the Ketchup Court podcast. Don't forget to like this video, share this video, and subscribe for more legal cases that we cover on this channel. We do nothing but cover legal cases and true crime on here. You can also check out our playlist that we have of all of our content. They're all available in the playlist option. Make sure you go check that out. So make sure that you hurry back and catch up with us. See you on the next one. Bye for now.